Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce RTX 3060 12GB model in Alan Wake 2. This one is the Afox model of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers, and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups GPU. Z resizable bar is also enabled, and again, we got 12GB of GDDR6 to work with in this card. And over on the left, we're pairing it with the i5-13600K at stock speeds and 32GB of DDR5 6000MHz RAM in dual channel. As usual, let's go over the PC requirements first. We land on recommended with the RTX 3060. As you can see, it asks for 8GB of VRAM. We actually got the 12GB model, of course, which is way faster than the 8GB version. So I guess we should be good for a great visual fidelity experience with the 3060. Let's find out, shall we? Alright, let's go over the settings first. I'm starting at 1080p resolution using DLAA, because you can't really set it to native with DLSS. If you set it to FSR2, it actually enables native resolution, but it gets slightly lower FPS, like 2 or 3 lower FPS than DLSS with DLAA. I wish they introduced a sharpness slider as well. Anyway, moving on, we're using the low settings preset, which is not the lowest settings possible. As you can see, there are things that could still go lower, and ray tracing is of course turned off at the moment. So this is native 1080p with DLAA on top, which is anti-aliasing basically, and it looks nowhere near low settings in other games, right? It actually looks like ultra settings, high settings in some other titles out there. So again, I'll say the same thing that I said in the 4060 video, and that is this game should have had a very low settings preset that actually looks way worse and performs a heck of a lot better for people with weaker cards than RTX 3060s and 2060s and stuff like that, because at the minimum, it actually asks for the RTX 2060. Now, in terms of VRAM utilization, you can see that it's below 6GB all of the time here at 1080p using low settings, and that's pretty accurate with the minimum requirements. Once again, it asks for the 2060, which is a 6GB GPU. It also has a 12GB model, but yeah, 6GB will be enough for low settings in this one. I wonder how the 4GB will fare, though, like a 3050, for example, 4GB model on laptops and other GPUs that I will test in the future in this game as well, like 1650s and stuff like that, which is the second most popular GPU on Steam. Now, I'm gonna stop it right there. Let's enable that DLSS, my friends, which looks very similar to native resolution with DLAA. Okay, so this is DLSS Quality, and it's getting 60s. Alright, usually looking in this direction is where it drops the most actually, and it's only dipping down into the 50s. I guess with an overclocked version of the RTX 3060, it will get you 60 plus all of the time. You could also overclock this model of the card, I could, and extract a few more FPS, keeping it at 60 plus all of the time, but as most people won't really overclock, I won't as well. Anyway, in a single-player title like this, I would argue that even at native resolution with 50 FPS on average, it's going to be a really great experience because the game does not stutter whatsoever. You can see that the frame time graph is very consistent, and I love to see that. And once again, the graphics are still amazing on low settings, so you can definitely enjoy it like this. Let's go up here, get close to the witch's hut. Yes, that's it, the hut. Yeah, is there Pizza Hut over here? That would be nice. We got tomato sauce right there, yes, and some things that you should not put on pizza, definitely. Let's keep on going. Inside of areas like that, of course, it's gonna get 60 plus. Also, in the city area, it's gonna get 60 plus using these settings, and you don't really need a 13600K, by the way, to get the most out of the 3060. If you took a look at the system requirements in terms of the CPU, you only need a 3700X for the maximum 4K ultra ray tracing settings. That's the highest CPU requirement of this game. Let's bump it up to medium settings. I'm going to keep this one on low. I'll only set it to high on the high settings preset. No ray tracing yet, all right? And this is it. So native resolution, medium settings, 1080p with the DLAA, which again gives you slightly higher FPS than native FSR2, which is weird. Because DLAA is usually a little bit more intensive than native resolution, but still, okay. And this drops things down tremendously into the 30s, but still, remember, this is worst case scenario, and getting 30-ish FPS still well above 30 actually. It's not even dropping into the low 30s. Means that it's going to be a consistent 30 plus FPS experience the entire time, and it will look slightly better. If you didn't tell me that this was medium settings, let's put it in this way, I would have guessed that this is ultra settings in this game. Now, there is not an ultra settings preset, actually. For ultra settings on the RTX 4080 yesterday, I actually manually set everything to the maximum, aside from ray tracing, and that's how I got the ultra settings, because high settings preset doesn't really max out everything, but still. Now let's enable the quality DLSS right here, and it's not enough to put us above 60, obviously. We get like 5 less FPS, I guess, than what we saw at low settings. It still touches 60 FPS at times, and I bet that in the city area of the game it would actually get 60 FPS, or 60 to 65 most of the time, but over here with a lot of vegetation, which is obviously super demanding, it definitely struggles a little bit more, and it can even drop into the 40s, as you can see there. It dipped to 49. Again, for a 3060, and after seeing the system requirements of the game, I thought it was going to run a little bit worse than it actually is. If you have a 3060 and you want to buy this game and play it, go for it. I hear that the story is amazing. I played through the first Alan Wake game, actually, years ago, and I really enjoyed it as well. And from what I've played in this one, about like 1 hour or 1.5 hours of the story, I was really enjoying it as well. So yeah, feel free to buy it, even if you must play at like 60 FPS most of the time. The low settings are there for you, and they still look really good. Let's stop it right there. 56 FPS average and 45 1% lows is what we get with medium settings and quality DLSS. I wouldn't really go below quality DLSS here at the 1080p resolution. Things can start looking a bit blurrier and noisy, yeah, a little bit more shimmery as well. And at the same time, it doesn't really improve your FPS like crazy, right? Now, it's time for high settings. And on high settings, it still doesn't max out everything, as I told you. With the 4080, I did max out everything manually, so it's not the same settings that we're testing here. And I will enable this one as well. This is a really intensive setting, by the way. Actually, I'm going to show you the low post-processing quality first, okay, with high settings. And it's getting 36, 37, standing right here. And now I'm gonna set it to high and see the difference. Alright, 33 and 34. It's not really as high of a difference as I thought it would be. I guess it made a bigger difference on the 4080 because we were getting higher FPS, so we'd get like 10 less FPS with this setting enabled, and here it's around like 10%, but that translates into 3 FPS. Anyways, over here it is still managing 30 plus frames per second. Of course, it gets really down there into the low 30s at times. So again, an overclock would definitely put it at 30 plus 100% of the time. But even here, okay, which is where I saw it drop the most so far, it's only dropping to the same 31 or 32 values that we've seen previously. Look at that. All right. That is not bad, 3060. Again, this is native resolution at 1080p with high settings and high post-processing. And if you want to have that 30 FPS experience and lock your FPS to get even more consistent frame times, you can have it with the 3060. And we still got that DLSS support, of course, which makes the image look pretty much the same. Once again. And it gets us 50-something frames per second or 40-something frames per second. Look at that. That is a tremendous improvement, my friends. It's both very nice to see and very sad to see, because that means that developers these days, not talking specifically about the developers of this game, because they made a great job optimizing it, you could say, or at least making it look super great to justify the performance that you get. But a lot of these newer titles are relying on upscaling technologies. Take a look at Starfield, for example. Looks terrible at native resolution. And on top of that, Starfield also doesn't really look all that great when you enable upscaling, especially FSR. If you do the DLSS mod, it actually looks really good. It's not the worst looking title with upscaling, but still, you can clearly tell that they relied on FSR completely, because if you set it to Ultra settings preset, it enables FSR by default at 75%. Medium settings preset in Starfield defaults to 50% FSR, which is 540p at 1080p resolution, basically. It's kind of insane, right? How is medium settings preset supposed to run at 540p? That's crazy. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. That's enough. I set it to DLAA once again, and now I'm gonna set it to low settings. Set this to low as well. Since it looks very good already with low settings, I'm gonna keep the low settings to test ray tracing, because again, ray tracing is gonna be insanely intensive, guys. Okay, so here we go. DLSS ray reconstruction is also here, which is nice. And, oh boy, see that? Low settings with low ray tracing. Ooh, that choppiness, man. See, this is much more emphasized here with 20 FPS than it was with 30 FPS, but sometimes with 30 to 35 frames per second, I would still see these little choppiness issues, okay? That's why I really recommend you to lock your FPS to 30 if you want the 1080p high settings experience, so you don't see any of this like frame skipping issue or whatever. But yeah, you can see that with RT you definitely need to have DLSS enabled. Otherwise, it's just not gonna happen at native resolution. It's not a VRAM issue. As you can see, it's only utilizing like 6 gigs. Let's go start counting our FPS, and it's getting 30s now, so if you want to play with RT, the lighting is definitely going to be improved. I'm curious to see if I still see the pop-in issues that this game suffers from at the even ultra settings or highest settings without ray tracing enabled. When I enabled ray tracing on the 4080, those would be gone completely. Yeah, no problems whatsoever. Let me take a look at the rock this time around. So it's going to be a lot less distracting in that regard, guys. Of course, it's also a little bit less detailed.
Maybe I should call David.
And it drops down into the low 30s at times, 30 FPS right there. So it's not great, but I guess it is playable. And if you really want to use ray tracing in this game for that accurate lighting, you can with the 3060. And I think you can even increase the texture resolution to ultra, since we have those 12 gigabytes of VRAM and still achieve exactly the same FPS with higher VRAM utilization. Yeah, it doesn't really change this tree all that much, but the ground textures definitely do look better here. And yeah, with ray tracing, this is probably how I would play it. Okay. That's enough 1080p, guys. We should move on to 1440p, and I'm not gonna test ray tracing at this higher resolution, because it already struggled a lot at 1080. Here we go. This is 2560 by 1440. Let's set it to low settings preset again. Turn off ray tracing, please. Yes. All right, that's much better in the menu. And, ooh, okay. So if you're running a 1440p monitor, guys, with your 3060, things are gonna be very intensive. They look great, but I think it might actually drop from 30 frames per second, especially if you see a little bit more action, for example, here in this forest area. I mean, I wish we could see it with Bob. I don't know where that bastard is, but yeah, I bet he would drop the FPS just by like 1 or 2 frames, and that would be enough to put us into the high 20s, which is kind of terrible. I mean, again, I would definitely lock it to 30 frames per second to achieve a consistent experience without the choppiness effects, but I am impressed. I was not expecting the 3060 to do 1440p native in this game. Okay. Alrighty then. Now let's try it with quality DLSS at 1440p. And it puts us up into the 40s. That's pretty cool. Obviously, You can clearly tell the shadow popping issues right there. See that? Look at that. That's terrible. And the fact that it still happens on high is very bad, you know? But yeah, now we're getting very similar visuals to what we saw at native resolution with quality DLSS this time. And we're well above 30 FPS the entire time, and we won't really have any of those choppy issues, you know? So I think if you have a 1440p panel, you should probably play like this. Maybe with balanced DLSS. I mean, balanced DLSS won't really give us many more FPS than these, and it will look that slight bit worse once again. But they did recommend balanced DLSS with medium settings at 1440p for the 3060, so we definitely gotta test balanced DLSS, at least on medium, okay? Alright, let's stop it right here. So we're getting 48, actually 50 here. Okay, let's stop it. And I'm gonna select balanced here. And now we went from 50 to 56, so that's actually a bigger improvement than I was expecting. Again, it's because we're getting higher FPS than previously. Like, we went from 35 to 33 or 32, that's 10% or so lower. And here, 10% would be 5 FPS, because we're in the 50s, so that's it. So you can expect around 10% higher frames on balanced DLSS. Compared to what we saw previously with performance DLSS at 1440p. Yeah, it's not that bad looking. I know some people who actually play games at 1440p with performance DLSS. I can see a little bit more noise in the image overall. But if your target is 60 frames per second, I guess you can actually get that most of the time in the game. Wow, with a 3060. Let's go back to native resolution, select medium settings preset and no ray tracing. And okay, so now it's down into the 20s already. It's not ideal. Definitely far from ideal, my friends. Look at this. Not even touching 30 many times. And it's so choppy at the same time. Nope. We need that DLSS. Let's try quality first. Whoa, what the hell? 40s? Are you serious? It jumped up by quite a bit. I was expecting the 30 FPS experience that they put in the requirements. But no, we can actually get the 30 plus FPS experience at 1440p medium with quality DLSS, which is basically native resolution at this rate. You can't really tell a difference whatsoever. Again, it's surpassing my expectations, considering the requirements. So it's nice. A good case so far, don't you think? Yeah, it's a very, very good case, just walking around the freaking forest. See, this is what I don't like about these linear titles. I sometimes get really bored. Because I'm here just walking around in circles. Let's try out the balanced preset here on DLSS with medium settings. Okay. This is what they say is the 30 FPS experience on the requirements. And no, we're far from 30 FPS even in one of the most intensive areas in the game. That's insane. Also, balanced DLSS, once again, it has a little bit more shimmering, a little bit more noise in the image than quality DLSS. You can notice it a little bit here. Although it still looks very good, and I bet on like a 27-inch 1440p monitor it would look even better. Because I am using a 42-inch monitor, it's very big, so I can notice all of those little imperfections in the image and differences. But keep in mind, on smaller monitors, it would be even less noticeable, so it's okay. Yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna select the high settings with high post-processing. No ray tracing, of course. Gonna avoid that, again, at these higher resolutions. Ooh, it's getting the same FPS as the ray tracing low, right? At 1080p. With the low settings, everything. But it also looks probably quite a bit better, yes. A lot more detailed, for sure. Obviously, you shouldn't really play with 20 FPS, so let's not waste time here. Let's do quality. I guess this should be enough. Oh boy, no, it's getting lower 30s already. But you know what? That means that balanced DLSS on high settings will probably deliver 30 plus all of the time. Let's try it out like this, guys. So the requirements could ask for like a 3060. at 1440p 30 FPS, but instead of medium settings preset, high settings preset. And at this point, I'm starting to think that the 2060 will do a much better job than the requirements say it will do. That is very, very interesting. Look at this. Frame time graph is going a little bit crazy right now. Don't like that too much. What was that? It wasn't really that noticeable, but yeah, I guess it's because we're getting closer to that 30 FPS mark and we start seeing those little choppiness issues. Again, I really hope that they fix them. But yeah, this engine that they built is very, very good. I actually said that it was Unreal Engine 5 in the last video. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, this is not UE5. If it was, it would stutter like crazy. This is the Northlight engine. All right, let's go up to 4K. And at this res, I think I'm going to stick to low and only play around with the DLSS settings. Here we have it. Yep, obviously super, super intensive, but it looks so great, guys. On my 42-inch monitor, the game on low settings looks like... It's insane! It's insane! This always comes to my mind. Remnant 2. Redfall. I remembered Redfall while I was installing the GPU right here. Yeah, that came out this year. It has like 3 people playing it right now, and it runs like crap. It stutters every 10 seconds or 5 seconds. And even on highest settings, it kind of looks worse than Borderlands 3 or Borderlands 2. This game provides a better experience than Redfall. And it looks like that on low settings. Like, what? Are you serious? Anyway, let's go. Quality DLSS at 4K resolution. Still not enough to save the 3060, but it's getting close. Actually... maybe it is enough to save the 3060. Look at that, 29. Again, a little bit of an overclock wouldn't hurt the GPU, and it would certainly put it at 30 plus 100% of the time, which is very impressive. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here using the 4K resolution, because not many people are actually playing at 4K with the 3060. But still, it's pretty impressive to see this, right? Like 30 plus right now with balanced DLSS, looking, again, really similar to quality, but you can notice a bit more noise and shimmering around some edges. But it's not the end of the world. I think I would definitely get used to this. But I think performance DLSS is where this will shine the most. Balanced is already 30 plus all of the time, so if you want to lock it to 30, this is it. But performance still looks very good at 4K, and it delivers quite the boost in FPS compared to balanced, right? Instead of lower 30s, we're now getting 40s and high 30s. And that is a considerable difference in terms of smoothness, for sure. So even if you have a 4K monitor, you can play this game on the RTX 3060. No, it's not going to be 60 FPS, but I mean, it's freaking 4K. It certainly does look a lot better than native 1080p, which was just a blurry mess. This is a lot more detail, a lot more sharp and defined. It's great, guys. So that's been it for this one. Thank you very much for watching this game. Go ahead, buy the game if you have a 3060. You shall not worry about the requirements. And I'll catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.